Are you eating healthy, but still noticing that your hair seems to stop growing the way it used to? Have you started asking yourself, why does it feel like my hair growth has hit a wall after 50? Here's what's really going on inside your body, and importantly, inside your digestive and metabolic systems, that affects hair growth more than you might expect. Most of us think hair growth is simply about shampoo, conditioner, biotin gummies, or some magic supplement. But the truth is far more rooted in your metabolism, your hormones, and the foods you're eating every single day. What the research shows is that after age 50, your body's ability to regulate nutrients, stabilize blood sugar, and produce hormones shifts significantly. Insulin sensitivity may decline, inflammation may increase, and your liver, the central hub for nutrient processing, becomes even more critical for supporting healthy hair follicles. Here's a simple analogy. You can't expect a garden to produce vibrant, growing plants if the soil is depleted and the water supply is inconsistent. Hair follicles are no different. They need a steady supply of nutrients, stable metabolic conditions, and low inflammation to grow hair effectively. In this video, we're going to uncover something surprising. There are everyday foods many people consider normal or even healthy, that can actually slow hair growth after age 50. Not because they have toxic ingredients, but because of how they influence your metabolic environment, your hormone balance, and your body's ability to feed your hair at the cellular level. Today, we'll look at foods that spike blood sugar and trigger inflammation, foods that alter hormone balance in subtle but impactful ways, foods that impair nutrient absorption or increase oxidative stress, foods that interfere with sulfur and protein metabolism, both vital for hair, and foods that compete with nutrients your scalp needs most. Along the way, I'll explain the physiology, not fluff, so you truly understand why these foods matter, and not just what to avoid. You'll walk away with tools you can use today, including simple dietary swaps that support metabolic and hair health simultaneously. So if you're someone who wants clear, science-driven answers, rooted in biology, not myths, this video is for you. And if this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post evidence-based content like this every day to help you optimize your health naturally. Now, let's dive in. Let's start with one of the most underestimated drivers of slowed hair growth after 50, refined carbohydrates and hidden sugars. Here's what's really going on inside your body. After age 50, insulin sensitivity naturally declines. That means your body doesn't handle glucose as efficiently as it did at 25 or 35. When you eat foods like white bread, pastries, sweetened yogurt, fruit juices, breakfast cereals, or even large portions of white rice, your blood sugar rises quickly. Now imagine your bloodstream as a highway. When sugar floods in too fast, insulin rushes in to clear it. But when this happens repeatedly, day after day, insulin levels stay elevated longer than they should. Why does this matter for hair? Because chronically elevated insulin increases inflammation and stimulates androgen activity. And androgens, especially in metabolically stressed environments, can shrink hair follicles over time and shorten the growth phase of your hair cycle. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your hair follicle as a factory. It has 3 shifts: growth phase, anagen; transition phase, catagen; resting phase, telogen. When insulin and inflammation stay high, the factory shortens its growth shift and moves into rest mode sooner. That means slower growth, thinner strands, and longer gaps between cycles. Research in metabolic health consistently shows that high glycemic diets increase systemic inflammation markers and oxidative stress. Hair follicles are extremely metabolically active tissues. They are sensitive to even small disruptions in blood flow and nutrient delivery. And here's something most people don't realize. High blood sugar also damages tiny blood vessels through a process called glycation. When proteins are exposed to excess glucose, they stiffen. This affects microcirculation, including the small capillaries that feed your scalp. Less oxygen, less nutrient delivery, slower hair production. So what do we do instead? First, stabilize blood sugar. Practical protocol. Replace refined grains with whole, fiber-rich carbohydrates like lentils, quinoa, or steel-cut oats. Pair carbohydrates with protein and healthy fats to slow absorption. Avoid drinking sugar, no fruit juices, sweetened coffees, or sodas. Keep total carbohydrate portions moderate, especially in the evening when insulin sensitivity is lowest. A simple rule: if a carbohydrate digests quickly and doesn't require much chewing, it likely spikes glucose faster. You don't have to eliminate carbs, you just need to control the metabolic context. When blood sugar stabilizes, inflammation decreases, hormonal signaling becomes more balanced, blood flow improves, hair follicles stay in growth mode longer. Now let's talk about something that surprises many people. Fish is healthy, it's anti-inflammatory, it supports longevity. But after 50, the type of fish you choose matters more than ever. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Large predatory fish, like tuna, swordfish, king mackerel, and shark, accumulate mercury over time. Mercury is a heavy metal neurotoxin, but it also interferes with sulfur metabolism, antioxidant systems, and protein structure. And hair is made primarily of keratin, a sulfur-rich protein. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of sulfur as the steel framework inside your hair strands. It forms disulfide bonds that give hair strength and structure. Mercury binds strongly to sulfur. When it does, it essentially hijacks the raw materials your follicles need to build strong hair fibers. After age 50, your detoxification systems, especially liver glutathione production, are often less efficient. Glutathione is your master antioxidant and one of the primary defenses against heavy metals. If mercury intake quietly exceeds your detox capacity, even at low chronic levels, several things happen. Increased oxidative stress, impaired mitochondrial function, disrupted thyroid signaling, reduced protein synthesis efficiency, and thyroid function is especially important here. Hair follicles are highly responsive to thyroid hormones. Even subtle disruptions in thyroid signaling, not full hypothyroidism, but mild inefficiency, can shorten the growth phase of hair. Mercury can interfere with enzymes involved in thyroid hormone conversion. That means T4 may not efficiently convert into active T3 at the tissue level. Slower thyroid signaling, slower cellular metabolism, slower hair production. What the research shows is that chronic exposure to heavy metals increases oxidative stress and can impair hair structure and growth dynamics, particularly in aging populations with reduced antioxidant reserves. Now, this doesn't mean avoid fish. In fact, omega-3 fatty acids are beneficial for scalp circulation and inflammation control. The key is smart selection. Here's the dietary protocol. Choose smaller fish, sardines, wild salmon, anchovies, herring. Limit large predatory fish to occasional intake. Support detox pathways through sulfur-rich vegetables like broccoli, garlic, onions, and arugula. Ensure adequate selenium intake. Brazil nuts, wild fish, pasture-raised eggs. Selenium helps protect against mercury toxicity and supports thyroid enzymes. And here's an important metabolic reminder. Hair growth is not just about adding nutrients. It's also about reducing interference. If the follicle is fighting oxidative stress, heavy metal burden, and thyroid inefficiency, it will prioritize survival over growth. After 50, efficiency matters. Clean inputs matter. When you reduce toxic load, mitochondria function better. Thyroid signaling improves protein synthesis, becomes more efficient. Follicles remain metabolically active. Now that we've addressed heavy metals and thyroid metabolism, let's move to another everyday category that quietly alters hormone balance and directly impacts follicle longevity. Now let's talk about a category that almost no one connects to hair growth, but absolutely should: highly processed industrial seed oils. I'm referring to oils like soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, cottonseed oil, and canola oil when they're heavily refined and used in packaged foods, fried foods, salad dressings, and restaurant cooking. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Hair follicles are extremely sensitive to inflammation. They require steady blood flow, stable signaling molecules, and a low oxidative environment to remain in the growth phase. Many processed seed oils are high in omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. In balance, omega-6 fats are not harmful. The problem is excess, especially when omega-6 intake overwhelms omega-3 intake. When omega-6 fats dominate, your body produces more pro-inflammatory signaling molecules derived from arachidonic acid. Over time, this shifts your internal environment toward chronic low-grade inflammation. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your scalp as soil. Inflammation is like a constant low-grade wildfire under the surface. It may not burn the forest down immediately, but it weakens the roots. Hair follicles under inflammatory stress often shift prematurely from the growth phase into the resting phase. And here's the metabolic link most people miss. After age 50, mitochondrial efficiency declines. Your follicles depend on mitochondria to generate ATP, cellular energy, to fuel hair production. Oxidized seed oils increase oxidative stress, which damages mitochondrial membranes. Less mitochondrial efficiency means less energy available for growth processes. What the research shows is that oxidized polyunsaturated fats increase markers of lipid peroxidation and systemic inflammation. Hair follicles, being rapidly dividing structures, are particularly vulnerable to oxidative damage. Additionally, chronic inflammatory signaling may increase levels of certain prostaglandins that shorten the hair growth cycle. So what's the practical solution? First, reduce exposure to heavily processed oils. Dietary protocol. Avoid deep-fried restaurant foods whenever possible. Read labels. If soybean oil or corn oil is one of the first ingredients, reconsider. Replace processed oils with extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, and moderate amounts of grass-fed butter or ghee. Increase omega-3 intake through wild salmon, sardines, chia seeds, and flax seeds. You don't need perfection, you need balance. The goal is to shift the inflammatory environment. When you lower chronic inflammation, blood flow to follicles improves. Mitochondrial efficiency increases growth phase, duration stabilizes, shedding becomes more regulated. And if this kind of root cause breakdown is helpful, if you appreciate understanding the why, not just the what, consider subscribing. I post evidence-based strategies daily to help you optimize health naturally. Now let's move to something even more common, something many people consume every single morning that subtly alters hormone signaling and can slow hair growth after 50. Now let's talk about something many people don't consider harmful in small amounts, but after 50, even moderate intake can quietly slow hair growth. Alcohol. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your liver is the metabolic command center for hormone regulation, nutrient processing, and detoxification. After age 50, liver efficiency naturally declines. Blood flow may decrease slightly. Enzyme activity changes, and recovery from metabolic stress takes longer. When you consume alcohol, your liver must immediately prioritize breaking it down. It essentially pauses other metabolic tasks to handle ethanol detoxification. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your liver as a processing plant with multiple departments: hormone regulation, nutrient conversion, protein synthesis support, detoxification. When alcohol enters the system, the entire plant shifts workers into the emergency alcohol breakdown department. That means less efficient estrogen and androgen balance, slower nutrient processing, increased oxidative stress, reduced glutathione availability. And glutathione, as we discussed earlier, is critical for protecting hair follicles from oxidative damage. Alcohol also increases acetaldehyde, a toxic intermediate compound. Acetaldehyde generates free radicals, which damage cellular membranes, including those of hair follicle stem cells. Over time, this shifts follicles towards stress signaling. There's another important mechanism here: blood sugar instability. Alcohol initially raises blood sugar, then often causes a reactive drop several hours later. These fluctuations trigger cortisol release. Elevated cortisol, especially chronically, shortens the anagen growth phase of hair. After 50, cortisol sensitivity increases. Even subtle chronic elevations can influence hair cycle regulation. What the research consistently shows is that chronic alcohol intake impairs zinc absorption, disrupts protein metabolism, and increases systemic inflammation. All factors linked to impaired hair growth dynamics. Hair is metabolically expensive tissue. If your body senses nutrient stress or oxidative burden, it diverts resources away from growth functions and towards survival functions. So, what's the dietary protocol? Limit alcohol to occasional intake, ideally no more than 1 to 2 servings per week. Avoid drinking on an empty stomach to reduce glucose volatility. Prioritize liver-supportive foods, cruciferous vegetables, garlic, onions, leafy greens. Ensure adequate protein intake, at least 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight daily after 50 to maintain hair structure. If someone tells me their hair has slowed dramatically, one of the first questions I ask is about alcohol frequency. Not because alcohol is inherently evil, but because metabolic resilience changes with age. When you reduce liver burden, hormone regulation improves, oxidative stress decreases, nutrient absorption becomes more efficient, hair follicles regain metabolic stability. Now let's move to our fifth and final everyday food category, one that many people believe is healthy, but that can quietly create micronutrient gaps that limit hair growth after 50. The fifth everyday food mistake isn't about something you're eating too much of. It's about something you may not be eating enough of: protein. After 50, many people unintentionally drift into lower protein diets. Breakfast becomes toast or fruit. Lunch is a salad with minimal protein. Dinner portions shrink. Or there's a shift toward convenience carbohydrates. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Hair is made of keratin, a structural protein rich in amino acids like cysteine, methionine, and lysine. Your body does not store protein the way it stores fat or carbohydrates. It must constantly obtain amino acids from dietary intake. And when protein intake drops, your body becomes strategic. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of amino acids as building blocks in a construction yard. Your body has several construction projects happening at once: immune system repair, muscle maintenance, enzyme production, hormone synthesis, organ repair, hair production. If the supply of building blocks decreases, the body prioritizes essential structures first: heart, liver, immune cells. Hair, it's considered non-essential. So the follicle slows production. After 50, something else happens: anabolic resistance. This means your body becomes less efficient at stimulating muscle and protein synthesis from the same amount of dietary protein compared to when you were younger. Research in aging physiology shows that older adults require higher protein intake per meal to adequately trigger muscle protein synthesis. Hair follicles are also highly active protein synthesizing structures. If systemic protein signaling is weak, follicular activity weakens too. There's another layer. Low protein intake can reduce levels of insulin like growth factor 1, IGF-1, within a healthy range. While excessively high IGF-1 is not desirable, chronically low signaling can reduce cellular growth support, including in hair follicles. And protein deficiency often leads to secondary micronutrient deficiencies: iron, zinc, biotin, B12, all critical for hair cycle regulation. What the research shows is that even marginal protein deficiency can shift more hair follicles into the telogen, resting phase, a phenomenon known as telogen effluvium. So what's the dietary protocol? After 50, aim for 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, 25 to 35 grams of high-quality protein per meal. Include leucine-rich sources like eggs, fish, poultry, Greek yogurt, or legumes. If plant-based, ensure amino acid diversity, combine legumes and whole grains, and consider a complete plant protein source. And here's something simple but powerful. Start your day with protein. A protein-rich breakfast stabilizes blood sugar, supports anabolic signaling, and provides the raw materials follicles need. If this breakdown has been helpful, if you're realizing hair health is deeply metabolic, not cosmetic, consider subscribing. I share daily, science driven strategies to help you protect your energy, metabolism, and longevity naturally.